The recent shift to hybrid offices has organizations considering replacement of outmoded systems. They're looking for simple, reliable, flexible, secure, and easy-to-budget video conferencing solutions. It's time for a totally new approach. It's time the AV industry met the Internet of Things. Introducing Conference Room as a Service, subscription-based products and services only from Wesco. A subscription that scales and works for your business. Together, with your preferred AV installer, we help you choose the right size meeting rooms and large conference rooms. Once you've chosen the size room you want to deploy, choose Zoom or Microsoft Teams and add options like bring your own device and a monitor if needed. Then choose how many rooms you want to add to your subscription. It's that easy. Once your AV integrator has installed and activated your equipment, your Conference Room as a Service subscription has you covered with advanced replacement, an industry-leading warranty, live 24/7 world-class help desk support, and a portal for remote monitoring and service tickets. With this service, all rooms are online and ready to go once connected to the network. It's never been easier to deploy, monitor, and evolve your workplace technologies, all at an affordable price with easy payments. Conference Room as a Service subscription-based products and services, only from Wesco. Simple, reliable, flexible, secure, easy to budget.
The Microflex Advance MXA902 integrated conferencing ceiling array is the first complete ceiling audio solution for AV conferencing. Because it mounts overhead, it provides more consistent sound quality throughout the room than an all-in-one soundbar mounted on the wall. The MXA902 has all three things needed for exceptional audio in small to medium-sized meeting spaces. First, there's an advanced array microphone with single-zone automatic coverage technology. It captures every participant in a 20 by 20 foot area right out of the box. Second, onboard IntelliMix DSP eliminates annoying echo and room noise and adjusts talker levels automatically. Everyone is heard clearly no matter where they sit. Finally, the MXA902 has a built-in wide dispersion loudspeaker that delivers robust sound throughout the room without the need for external speakers and amplifiers. Remote participants and program audio playback are easy to hear. With its revolutionary integrated design, the MXA 902 is quicker to install than individual microphones, loudspeakers, and signal processors. One network cable with PoE Plus is all you need. The MXA 902 integrated conferencing ceiling array is the ideal solution for AV conferencing in small and medium-sized meeting rooms. It's the fastest way to better sound.
If you're installing or troubleshooting network devices, you know that reliable operation depends upon the performance of the cabling and the network. With LinkIQ, you get cable testing from the world leader along with network testing. The LinkIQ can characterize the performance of your cable up to 10 gigabits per second and troubleshoot problems fast. When it's time to connect to the network, LinkIQ shows you the switch name and IP address, the port number, speed, and VLAN. It also shows the IP address of the switch and performs a connectivity test to an IP address of your choice. Plus power over Ethernet testing that includes a load test to make sure the power you need is really there. When you're done, store the results, then document it with Linkware, the industry's de facto standard. LinkIQ, cable testing you trust and network testing you need.
I'm holding a dog.
That's a dog.
This is my buddy Brax from Press Pause. Brax has been hanging out with us all week out in the lobby here at InfoComm, up for adoption this week, but we wanted to bring him on today because he's the bestest boy I ever did see. I'm Ben Thomas.
I'm Samantha Powell. And shout out to my dog at home, Mia. I miss you.
Oh yeah, shout out Pepper too. I feel like I've got to shout my dog out.
You gotta shout him out.
I love you, Pepper. You're the best.
Aw, and if you're here at InfoComm, you can definitely check out these dogs from Press Pause.
Press Pause.
10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So cute. So, sorry, we have a show, I guess?
We're distracted.
So we're going to be talking with someone from Fluke Networks about Ethernet. Yes, Ethernet. Sorry, the dog is distracting me.
Yes.
About the changes in Ethernet and the utilization there.
And we've also got 3 conversations happening right after that. We're talking digital signage, projection, and I'm talking more about this dog probably throughout the rest of the month.
I think we should.
I think it's time to start the show because I don't know if we'll start if we don't do it right now.
Do we have to give him back?
I think so.
All right, fine.
All right,
let's start the show. dogless, but I think it's still going to be an amazing show. So we've got Mark Mullins here with Fluke Network. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. No one told me I had to go on after a dog.
I mean, it's
yeah,
really. That's a tough
hard.
spot. That's
like
like
a discount or something.
tough, man. It's tough.
We'll see what we can do. If not, you can always go out and check them out, and you can also pet them, and they're just amazing.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it's really awesome. Next time I'm gonna hold one. Well, let's get the show started. So, the role of Ethernet has evolved in the Pro AV industry over the years. So, can you speak to the ways that it's changed and what have been some of the major drivers in the evolution of this?
Well, sure. There are two things I think that have made Ethernet so popular in the AV industry. The first is that you can carry so much over a single cable. You're going to replace lots of different cables with just a single Ethernet cable. And then the other one is that there's a standardized low-cost method of cabling. It's all the same, right? And that makes installing it easier, it makes it cheaper, and it also probably makes it more reliable because you're not dealing with all these different types of cables for different types of signals.
Well, Mark, as we continue to see, the category cables evolve, right? Most of us familiar with Cat 5, Cat 6, but a lot of us don't actually know what that means, right? Whether it's bandwidth capabilities, whether it's PoE capabilities. What are some of the modern innovations that you're seeing people leverage to these category cables?
Well, I guess the thing you see is that the higher performance cabling is allowing higher frequency signals to carry over the same pair. I mean, when we first got in the business in the early 90s, people were astounded that you could get 10 megabits a second across just a simple twisted pair cable. And now I've seen demonstrations of that level of technology on like barbed wire. And on regular twisted pair cable now, it's a whole different kind of a twisted pair cable, but you can easily do 10 gigabits per second, and that is a 10,000 times increase in terms of the performance. That's based on, of course, the cabling speed and redesigned. We've gone from Cat 5e to Cat 6 to Cat 6a, and Cat 8, maybe someday on the horizon. And then the electronics, of course, that allow you to use that. That means you can put a lot more things on the cable. And then the other thing is now that we've added power over Ethernet, that's just one more thing you can add to the cable. And you only need one, right?
Ideally, yes.
That's all you need. So why is proper cabling so critical in the use of Ethernet in Pro AV applications, and what are the potential consequences if you don't adhere to those standards?
Well, so let's look at like a Category 6A cable spec. I'm sure you're all familiar with that spec and what the insertion loss requirements are at, say, 500 megahertz. It's 56 dB, as we all know. And that doesn't mean anything to most people, but what that means is that the cable can lose 99% of the signal from where it starts out to where it goes and still work. Now that's a lot of loss. You'd think that's amazing, but I talked about those electronics that make that possible. But the thing is, it can't lose much more than that or it won't work anymore. So it's very important to accurately measure the performance of that cable so that you're only losing the 99%. It sounds like a lot, but it will still work. And that when you go to use it, then it's going to be able to actually work. Now, most manufacturers require full-up certification. It also protects the installer and the contractor, because if I can say, hey, I certified this cable, I know it's good, here's the reports, then you know that I did my job, and I know that you can't really come back and say, well, these cables aren't any good, because I've got a report that says it was, you accepted it. So it really keeps things much smoother in the industry for people to have certified cable.
Well, what's important too, you mentioned certified cable. A lot of times the industry has kind of known IP cabling as a little bit, we'll call it less robust than your traditional XLR, a lot of your fiber cables, a lot of your SDI cables, things like that. So testing is a critical part of that, right?
Right.
Making sure that the connectivity is actually working and functioning properly. Talked about some of those challenges that it comes to whenever you're talking about testing cables for functionality.
Well, you talk about Ethernet, and one thing about Ethernet that you'll find that's really amazing is how robust it actually is. It will work in the face of lots of different kinds of problems, and unfortunately it will also mask those problems so you don't see them when you're actually in operation. I got an example here on one of our testers that I like to show. I don't know if hopefully you can see that out there. What this is, we've got a cable that we tested. This is a result I stored, and if you look at it carefully here, there's a wire map. So there's 4 pairs in an Ethernet cable, so 8 conductors. And if you look here carefully, you can see the number 4 one is broken. It's not working. And you think, well, okay, it's good. I caught that. The cable failed. I won't have that problem. But here's the thing. If I hadn't tested that cable, it would still work. You might notice down here it says this cable is capable of handling 10 meg and 100 meg traffic. Now you get a red X on the 10G. That means it won't handle 10 gig. And that's what I wanted to test it to. But the thing is this cable actually will work, and this is what the tester's telling me, it will work for 10 meg and 100 meg. So let's say out in the real world I didn't test this cable. I hook it up. Ethernet will say, okay, I can't work at 100 or at gig. I'll just downshift to 100 meg. And now I'm getting 1/10 of the bandwidth I thought I needed to get the job done. Now, in the IT world, that's not a big deal. That means your email might get retransmitted, and you might get it 10 seconds later than you would have otherwise. Nobody cares, right? I don't want to get email anyway half the time.
Right.
So that's a big problem. But if that's on a live video stream and I start losing packets, there's no time to retransmit them, and suddenly my video quality just goes down the tubes. But I don't know why, and it could be a disastrous time to try and figure out why it isn't working. And that's why being able to test the cable and looking at the performance of the cable is so important beforehand, because Ethernet really hides a lot of those kinds of problems.
Interesting. So can you elaborate on the maintenance requirements associated with using Ethernet in Pro AV, and how do you differ from traditional versus traditional AV setups?
Well, so now what's, in the old school AVs, you'd have cables for audio, cables for video, cables for power. You'd probably have also other control cables that are controlling different things. And now you put all that on one cable, right? Well, in the old days, for example, if you wanted to troubleshoot a power cable, I'd whip out my Fluke DMM, I'd go in there and probe it. I got 120 volts, I'm good. With the new cabling where I put everything on that, I can't just use basic tools like that anymore, right? I have to have a custom-built tool, kind of like this one, that can go in and look at that cable and look at all the things that are going on it. What's going on with the power? Are the signals okay? Is the cable okay? What's going on? Now, it might sound like that's going to make it harder, but I think in the long run that makes it easier, because you've just got one cable to troubleshoot. You can use one tool, shows you all the different things that are going on that cable, and then you can go in and figure out which thing to fix. As opposed to, in the old days, I'd need an entire toolbox full of products to be able to test a video cable, an audio cable, a power cable, etc. So I think it makes it easier, but you do have to have the right kind of tools to do that job.
Well, I wanted to follow up too. You talk about having the right tools. You also have to have the actual right cable, right? One of the things that we see a lot in the AV industry is retrofits. People think they have really robust systems and failovers, and it turns out that their switch is their fail point, or they've got bad cables. What are some pieces of advice that you give to people, especially in the AV community, as maybe they're looking to retrofit some of these old and existing infrastructures?
Well, I guess I'd say, the one thing is that in certifying the performance of the cable is really important. We had a couple of guys by this morning that came in with a big cable, and he called it his, I don't know what he called it, his mystery cable. And it was one that they used to set up for shows, and when he plugged it in, he could get 10 gigabit Ethernet across it, so that was great. But then when he tried to run HD-based over it, it wouldn't work. He said the quality was really, really poor. Why is this cable doing this? I'm not sure what's wrong. So he said, bring it over and let us test it with a full-blown certifier. And what we found was that the resistance in some of the pairs was just too high, and that can make the cable basically not work very well. And a lot of times you won't find these things. As I said, you plug it in, it seems to work, I think it's okay, but then somebody might change something, as you said, they might plug in a different switch, it has a little different characteristics, and now it doesn't work very well anymore. If you'd certified that cable to Cat 6, or Cat 6A in this case, he wouldn't have had this problem, because he would have known it was bad right out of the gate. So you have to be careful. I'd always recommend using well-known brands of cabling. There's a lot of them out there. We act as kind of a judge in terms of cabling, and so people ask us, well, which is the best one? And we really try to stay out of that argument. But one of the things is, if you stay with any of the big brands, we rarely, if ever, see any problems with that. If you go by the cheapest thing you can find on Amazon, I like Amazon, I buy a lot of stuff on Amazon, but I wouldn't recommend buying the cheapest cable out there that you can find, because that's where this cable came from that these guys were using, and it met most of the performance specifications, but not all of them.
Well, Mark, we appreciate you coming on the show today. Obviously, as a Pro AV community, still relatively in the infancy of the ways that we can maximize the use of some of these cables. So we appreciate you coming on. We appreciate the work that Fluke's doing to help teach our measly little Pro AV souls over here. But thank you so much for coming on the show.
All right, thank you very much.
Well, hey, if you watched this morning, you saw the first episode of InfoComm. We're hitting you with a 2 for today, baby. Check out my escapades as we walked around the show floor this morning. This is InfoComm. We're walking around the show floor talking to some of my favorite people, getting weird, having some fun. What's up? Welcome to InfoComm. Courtney is one of my favorite people, and I'm going to sneak up on her real quick and put a microphone in her face. Courtney, how are you?
Hi, Ben. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. What's your favorite thing about the show so far?
Seeing your face.
That's wrong, but I'll take it. What you got going on?
We have a bunch of new products we're showing. Control room savvy. We have some giveaways.
Making my way downtown, InfoComm. Feet are hurting and I need to sit down. How is the show? Nick Milani.
Dude, I'm loving it. Honestly, like anytime we get to share our story, because we're an unknown.
You're not an unknown. You're not an unknown. Oh, he's making this up. Phann is awesome. Hey, shameless plug for my own show. I'm on with Dan tomorrow. Well, I mean, at this point, it'll be like yesterday. All right, here we go. Walking through my favorite part of InfoComm. This is trash. Our second on the food chain of Todd Musgrave's friends. Todd, it's so good to see you. We're fired up. Todd, look, you're the only guy I know who has a camera in outer space. Is that still true?
A lot of cameras in outer space.
Would you say like 2?
I can't talk about it.
That's called a BNDA right there. I just got rejected, baby. Todd, look, high level, you guys are some of the best POV cameras that I know. I use their stuff nonstop. What do you got new show this year?
So all of our POV cameras got a brand new refresh. We put Sony sensors in each one, but we also added a couple of IP cameras in NDI HX3.
Look, I don't let anybody ever place products on this show. Todd Musgrave is one of the smartest guys I know, so you can do whatever you want on InfoComm 2023. InfoComm, live from outer space. Got you, Todd.
You're back from outer space, huh?
Yeah, it was quite a visit. Some would say it was very short-lived, came back real quick. But yeah, look, InfoComm is always a really fun segment. We appreciate everybody playing along with us. I get to be goofy, and they get to be goofy. So we really, really enjoy it. But this next segment is not at all about me. It's about our great folks and friends over at Media Resources. We're having conversations around some of the ways that digital signage has evolved, especially in larger and smaller applications, which is every application. That's a weird tease. But we appreciate them joining us today. We've got Jamie, Jeff, and Doug from Media Resources. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Look, Jamie, we'll go ahead and start with you. Obviously, we're at a point now, and you could look around this floor and see so many different applications with digital signage, LED, projection. We're at this place now where digital signage kind of means everything, right? And you guys have historically been on the forefront of that, especially when it comes to large-scale displays, finding new ways to adapt those technologies. How have you been able to drive a lot of that innovation?
Well, first of all, it's having it in-house, and with us, it's an interesting thing. We actually started as a sign installer and a printer. Got into digital about 15 years ago, and what we've seen is a massive transformation away from static into digital across many things. The technology in this room is completely different than what it was 10 years ago, and we're seeing a transformation of probably 2 additional levels of technology in the next 3 or 4 years. We did it through having some great people like Doug and Jamie and others in this room, and really excited about what we see.
And so how have you seen technology evolve in this space? So not only from a price point, but also from an application perspective.
So the price point has come down probably about 3-fold, and we see in the next year that's probably going to be halved again. So we're seeing literally a plethora of new things. I'll get it turned over to Doug here, who's been kind of one of the pioneers in this industry.
Sure. We've gone from early stages of LED. We're back in the outdoor products that we've done. We're through-hole dip, and in the indoor industry, we've talked about SMD technologies and whatnot, and then gone down to now below 1 millimeter, 0.78, 0.6, and the technology, because of the pixel pitches that are going down, is changing. And it's changing rapidly. SMD with gold wire bond and copper wire bond systems have been the staple in the industry for years. However, that technology has a large failure rate, right? Even at its best, it's 20 to 50 parts per million, okay? That's a lot when you consider one display that's not much bigger than that has 2.3 million pixels. So what we've done as a company is we've gone down the method of going with flip chip technology. And we use the flip chip technology, which gets rid of the gold wire bonding and whatnot, which increases the reliability and decreases the failure points down to a 2 to 5 parts per million. And it's been awesome. There's some new technologies coming that we really won't talk a lot about because they're bleeding edge, but we're trying to be ahead of the curve. Things like chip on glass and some other things with thin film transistors in the back. Being a member of SID, I get to go to those technology symposiums and understand about what's coming. You know, you see all kinds of new technologies, but we've been doing the flip chip for about 3 years. A lot of the companies in the show floor today are just now bringing it out. So.
Well, Doug, wanted to follow up with that too, right? One of the historical challenge of LED, is, as you mentioned, is kind of that failure, whether it's at a pixel level or a panel level. The burden historically has fallen on the end user, and because it'll happen right before a show, right? You can't call your integrator, you're picking up every phone number you have, right? How are you seeing the end user, especially with these new technologies, be able to effectively either replace or troubleshoot in real time?
So I hear that question a lot, and to be honest, because the failure rates in the product that we're using today, the flip chip technology, is below 5 parts per million, you can't even see the failures, right? So the gentleman that was just on with the Fluke, if you've got the right cabling in the backside, you don't got to worry about that. If you have the right driver technology on your designed module, then you don't have to worry about that. So then it comes down to pixels out, right? If you end up with 10 or 20 pixels out on a panel because somebody walked by and touched it with the SMD technology, then you're going to have a lot of failures. You have to change it right at the show. With the technology we have, it has a GOB coating on it, and you can touch it, use it. You can clean it with Windex, and it doesn't kill it. Okay, so it's not as big of a problem as it once was. However, our product can be changed out quickly, which is a suction cup pop in, no cables, cableless technology.
And so what sort of customer demands are you seeing that are driving the next generation of LED technology?
As the technology has got cheaper, more pervasive, and more reliable, as Doug mentioned, it's really across every single application you can think of. So the old command and control, advertising platforms, retail, every single use case we had print in, we now have digital in. I can't think of a use case we haven't had. And the other interesting thing that we're seeing is we've been doing outdoor billboards and spectaculars and Times Square stuff for years, and we've been doing the indoor. It's this fine pixel pitch outdoor is the new world. It's replacing LCDs and transit shelters and hot heat environments and stuff. So we're seeing that as another whole growth case of digitals on the side of buses and stuff that were tried before, but it didn't work with the SMD technology.
The technology now allows for that.
Yeah. Well, and Jamie, I want to bring you in as well. You know, one of the things that as a community that we see here, obviously at InfoComm, is the importance of the channel, right? And there are technologies that I would say end users are more hands-on about, but really the end user and I'll call the consumer just knows what looks good, right? So the integrator really takes a lot of that burden from the design standpoint, from the application, obviously installation. Talk about the role of those integrator and channel partners, especially when it comes to long-term success of the channel and installation world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, when it comes to success in the channel, it really is about trust. And I mean, I know that's a trite thing to say because you can apply that to any industry, but in this industry, the trust has to be multi-level, at the technological level, at the personnel level, at the company level. Is the company fiscally sound? Are they going to stand behind their product? Are they going to be here in 10 years? You know, I've been in this industry for 30 years, and I've been to this show for many, many years. And I've seen a lot of companies make it through the tough times, and a ton that have not, and a ton that have touted that they're going to make it, and they're going to be in there, and they're going to stand firm, and they end up, you know, they're gone in a couple of years. So my experience has been that if a integrator is going to take a step off the ledge, there needs to be a high level of trust for them to do that, because cutting edge and bleeding edge technology means there's a risk.
Yeah.
And so we have to be, as a company, we have to be prepared to take on those risks and get the integration channel to trust that we're making the right decisions so that when they put their trust in us as a company, we're going to deliver.
Well, I want to follow up on that too. I love that point that you mentioned where there's so much risk obviously in bleeding edge, but there is typically less demand for the bleeding edge, right?
Yeah, true.
How do you balance that? Especially, look, you talk about the design and application standpoint. How do you balance someone who says, look, we want what's happening in 25 years, but we want it today, right? How do you balance that with, Doug's point, where something that's going to work, something that's going to be reliable, but something really that is kind of next level?
I wish I had the perfect answer for you. Because
that's why we asked the question.
That's why you're here.
That's a balancing act. I mean, candidly speaking, because there's a lot of facets to that. You have to, you have to look at the technology. Make the right assessment of the viability of it. Can it be applied to the application? Is there a way for an integrator to use their technical wherewithal to take the technology that we're bringing so that it applies correctly into the application? There's a lot of facets to that, to that question. So I think at the end of the day, to answer your question succinctly, I think at the end of the day, it's incumbent upon us to be very careful how far we take that risk.
And if I can add to that, there's a couple of things that we've found useful. First of all, Doug and his team here in the States and Canada and overseas, we do a massive amount of testing, right? The second thing we do is from customers who like to play on the front end, we'll tell them and go through prototyping and test cases. Don't roll out until we've really done this, even though the labs and everything else say it's good. Let's make sure. And we're very transparent on where we believe the risks are. So like bleeding edge is like things like digitals on the side of moving buses. You don't want to do a mass rollout of that until you've proven that.
Yeah.
So, but be open to that.
Yeah, I think to add to that, we have customers that do ask for the bleeding edge. We had one not long ago in Baltimore that asked us to do a bleeding edge technology, and we told them up front, we can do this, and we have this product, and we delivered exactly what we said. And it was pretty much perfect, but there were issues because it was bleeding edge. But they worked with us to work through that, right? And we were very, very transparent. And I think the fact of us being transparent as a company, as well as bringing the right team together to apply it. You don't just put a junior applications engineer or a junior sales engineer to figure these things out. You bring the experts in that you need, even if they're from outside the company, to bring them in to make it come together.
Fantastic. Well, I can't thank all three of you enough for joining us. Thank you, Jamie, Jeff, and Doug. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for sharing this information.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
So, who knew that you could determine total video bandwidth and explain that through Skittles?
We just talked about Ethernet.
Now we're going to do that, but we've got a video to show you how AVIXA explains how to do that with Skittles. Take a look.
When it comes to an AV over IP network, everyone knows that video consumes enormous amounts of bandwidth. It can be a little hard to visualize sometimes, so we figured we'd use Skittles to help illustrate. There are a lot of factors that go into determining total video bandwidth, but for the sake of this illustration, these Skittles will represent pixels. Hey! And as much as I would love to have a 1-to-1 ratio of pixels to Skittles, once you run the math, it quickly gets out of hand. So in this case, one Skittle equals 1,200 pixels. Let's start by going back to standard definition, 4:3 television. 640 pixels wide by 480 pixels high, for a total of almost 307,200 pixels, or 246 Skittles. And if you're old enough to remember the 80s and 90s, this was great. I watched a lot of TGIF on standard definition television. But around the turn of the century came high definition. It was mind-blowing that we were now going to watch TV in 16:9 widescreen format. 720p nearly tripled our resolution from standard definition, resulting in close to 1 million pixels, or 733 Skittles. But the industry didn't wait long, and just a few years later, 1080p became the standard for television and online video. To this day, it still holds up, offering great video quality while not overtaxing your network. 1080p doubled 720's resolution with over 2 million pixels, or 1,651 Skittles. I think you can see where I'm going with this, so I'm just going to cut to the chase. 4K has quadrupled 1080p with over 8 million pixels, or 6,600 Skittles. At this point, I know what you're thinking. you want to see 8K. I got you. 8K has a whopping 33 million pixels, or 26,415 skittles. Full transparency, I did not count each one of those. Now, as I mentioned before, pixels are just one part of the total video bandwidth equation. Add in color channels, bit depths, frame rates, and you literally multiply these resolutions by the thousands per second. It's a lot of data. So what's the point? This demonstration helps us visualize the most critical component when planning video bandwidth for your AV system: your network. It's the connection that moves all of this data to your hardware, and it's got to move fast. Your facility might have some of the greatest high-definition displays the industry has to offer, and they're built to handle each and every one of these pixels. But if your network isn't robust enough to handle all that data, you'll never maximize the full potential of your hardware. Even just one HDMI cable that isn't certified for a specific bandwidth or resolution will limit the potential of your hardware. So where do you begin to plan a system like this? Well, it all begins with the application. Which resolution makes sense for your content and your hardware? For example, let's say you have a 1 gigabit switch network with Cat6a cabling. You're not going to be able to move 8K without heavy compression. However, a 10 gigabit switch network is much more feasible. When planning your AV over IP network, a little math can go a long way to ensure that you create a network that makes sense for your content and your budget. If you're interested in the total video bandwidth formula, we'll include it in the description below this video. And if you really want to go deeper on this topic, check out our AV over IP Foundations course by visiting AVIXA.org. Join us next time as we talk about video compression.
Did you have to hit it so hard?
Do you see all of the many ways that AVIXA TV entertains you? We've got dogs, we have Skittles, we have karaoke.
We've got Mark Metzger, who is the host of that. Shout out Mark. Mark's one of my favorite people over here at AVIXA. That was actually incredibly insightful, right? That's one of the things that you're going to continue to see on AVIXA TV moving forward, is really simplifying some of those maybe more advanced topics in Pro AV. One of those topics that we get all the time, especially when it comes to image quality, brightness, things like that, is about projection, which is what our next conversation is about. We've got a couple great folks over from Barco over here. We've got Domien and Wouter. Thanks so much for coming on the show, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Glad to be here.
Look, my first introduction to the Barco ecosystem was through the projection and display and show control side, which is one of a handful of different verticals. But we're talking obviously specifically about projection today. So really as a whole in the display side, what are some of the ways, Domien, we'll start with you. What are some of the ways that you've seen that world evolve even in the last 2-3 years?
Yeah, so we've seen projection really taking off, really growing at very strong levels across the markets, both on the Pro AV sides, event sides, simulation sides, also on the cinema sides. We've seen the growth being driven by mapping applications. So people are not just looking at the visual experience, but are really in the experience. And that's something we've seen driving the growth across the world and bringing that wow experience to many visitors and patrons around the globe. Yeah.
And to add to that, I think what we've seen as well from technology, and it was mentioned in the video, is like the rise of resolutions. Things get more immersive. People get closer to the screen, right? So resolutions ramp up very fast. Projectors need to follow. Processing needs to follow. So for us, just bringing the next generation of technology without breaking the bank, without doubling the cost, that's the main priority for the projection industry. Yeah.
Wonderful. And as a leader in projection and processing technology, what emerging trends do you believe that's going to shape the next generation of visual experiences?
Yeah, so I think there's a few. I think people always like to be entertained. They like to know what is the best visual wow. So you expect pictures to be even more vivid, be sharper. So people are really in the immersive experience, but also have a very sharp, intense experience. I think another thing we'll see will be more driven by less technically skilled labor in many geographies. So a lot of things will become easier, and we'll make much more use of software to enable that easiness. I think some of the mega trends we also see are around sustainability. So climate change is everywhere, right? So impacting both regulations, but also customer demand, right? We cannot just let the planet grow in temperatures, so we also have to play our role as an AV industry from that aspect. And of course, there's many things which happen in technology in other industries around us, cloud-based opportunities, AV over IP opportunities, which move into our industry, and I think it's really our role as manufacturers to bring the value to the AV industry as a result.
Well, Wouter, one of the things that we've seen over the last probably 5 to 10 years is what I'll call the renaissance of the projector, right? We mentioned mapping technologies, we talked about immersive experiences, whether that's because of increases in brightness, resolution, like we spoke about. What are some of the things that you're seeing continue to advance and drive that renaissance of the projector?
Well, one thing, the beautiful thing about projection is you can project on anything, on any surface, right? And you see when it comes down to like the experience for the spectator, for the audience, you have to become more creative. If you want to get your story across, you have to be more creative. So the fact that you can use anything is a main driver to use projection technology. And then on top of that, projection technology by nature is very efficient. In terms of a sustainability point of view, it's very efficient. And the third thing I would say for the ergonomic aspect of it, the eye fatigue, it's very easy to look on a projection screen. So all of this together makes actually I would say the rise of projection coming back way more than I would say 5 years ago, where there was a big shift towards LED. I would say these are the three main elements that are driving that from my side.
And I know we've spoken a bit about sustainability. So are there any initiatives that Barco has in order to address sustainability in your product?
Yeah, so I think first of all, it's important as Barco, as a company, we subscribe to the net zero strategy. So that's really a company-wide strategy, which of course has implications on all the roadmaps, all the products we bring to the market. For projection specifically, we would be looking into modularity, we would be looking into remote connectivity, but I think the most important thing is really making the transition and pushing the transition, be at the forefront. We'll go from lamp-based projection to laser-based projection. I think that actually drives a lot of the waste, it drives a lot of the power efficiency. Actually, as an industry, I think we can actually save out the nuclear power plants in energy and really save on the sustainability side. On top of that, the laser technology also allows the experience to be much more consistent. By definition, you have a much more consistent output, which again helps our customers and moviegoers or patrons or visitors to, when they pay for an expensive ticket, they're sure they get a guaranteed very good visual experience they go to.
And perhaps one thing I want to add here is because when in the industry, when we talk about sustainability, we often look at the product. We look at the energy efficiency of the product, whether it's projection or something else. I think a fundamental aspect of sustainability in the industry is looking at how we do business, how do we do shows, how do we set up a museum, whatever it is. I think we are transporting a lot of goods every weekend. We are transporting whole crews every weekend. And I think thinking about how you can optimize that has an equal impact from a sustainability point of view. So remote crews, making sure you can put certain gear to the cloud, all of that stuff, for us as Barco, it's fundamental in driving sustainability beyond just the product itself.
Well, look, last question here, and I'll ask this to the both of you. You know, one of the things we battle in the AV industry is what I'll call good enough syndrome, right? Where something works and it functions and it's okay, right? But you talk about the life cycle of a projector, it's usually probably 10, 15 years, usually at most. We're hitting the back end of that life cycle. What are some of the things that you have to say to those people really who are looking to make some of those new decisions, whether it's in even verticals like hospitality, education, maybe outside of those traditional Pro AV verticals?
Yeah, so look, as a manufacturer, we want to offer choices, right? So if people want to sign into the latest and greatest, yes, we will cater for that. If people want to have support on, hey, how do we recycle all of this, we will cater for that. Even from a design perspective, we'd like to have things modular so we can actually work on reusing components and really drive a more sustainable industry from the design perspective, right? But I think for us, it's hard to say this is what it has to be. I think it's really up to us to come with solutions that are both make sense from a business perspective, but also can make this industry a more sustainable industry.
And to add to that, I think for me, the advice I would give to all those people is, since you have just used the projector for the past 10 years, choose technology that will last again for 10 years, which means for me that think about resolution, that's obvious, but also think about the way of working. You talked about AV over IP yourself. It's a big thing. Invest in processors, projectors that are ready for that future. And I think that's not always the case in certain purchasing decisions. I think it's very important for whether it's in a school or a live event, think about the next 5 to 10 years when you make that decision.
Incredible insight, gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Thanks for having us.
One more thing we're excited about. We talked about AVIXA TV. We've got another episode of how they do that for you. Check it out now.
Digital signage comes in all shapes and sizes. While some go big, others are more subtle, attempting to integrate with their surroundings. The digital signage here at Diagonal 123 in Barcelona was inspired by the building's architecture and decor. It's a great example of what's possible when great design meets great creative. Located just a few blocks from one of Barcelona's busiest plazas, Diagonal 123 is an office building with a massive cantilever high above the entrance. This structure provided the starting point when the design team began to make plans for the main lobby.
The landlord asked us for something very outstanding, like uncommon. So we start from the building identity and we design this L-shaped screen to imitate the L shape of the entrance. Also, the other very important focus point of the design is the green wall. So these stripes are follow the same pattern of the stripes of the facade. So it's also like an identity point of the building.
With the visual identity established, Carlos Delgado and the team from LED Dream began their work installing the digital signage.
But it's a 2.6 millimeters. It's a front service because as we don't have rear access or in the ceiling, we cannot access to the upper side. So everything is can be solved by the front side. So we remove by magnetic. We do the 90 degrees corner. We have to take care there because if you have to remove the LED modules, you have to take care to remove the piece. It's very important to do the 90 degrees corner perfectly.
As the installation continued, work began to develop the content for the screens. It was a collaborative effort to ensure that the physical and the digital would blend seamlessly together.
When we started the project, we were talking many hours with Priscilla. She was very worried about how will be this screen affecting the rest of the things that they are in the lobby. We try to decide which kind of contents can be the right ones.
We worked together to design all these graphics to ensure that they were integrated in the design. For example, we worked together on the colors used, on the contents.
You can spend a lot of money on your screen, but if you don't spend money on the contents, it won't be a success.
Colorful scenes from nature and urban landscapes from Barcelona allow the displays to shine. It's also customizable, with templates simple enough for anyone to use.
Another thing very important to try to make this display special is try to give information. The customer already has a very simple template where he can write a word, upload a picture, and then that will be built in a really nice video. This is an HTML5 template we made.
Diagonal 123 is another example of what happens when architects, interior designers, and AV work closely together.
It's not a huge project with different installations. It's a only huge project, but involves a lot of people. And I think this is one of the most important things for me, that it's a success made by all of us.
To check out more episodes of How'd They Do That, subscribe and follow us on social media. And if you know of an amazing AV experience we should feature, email us at video@avixa.org.
Now it's you have to pay, but in the past it was free. But it's working also. I before to arrive, I go to the plants.
We're back, and now we're joined with Jeff Muto, Bryan Phann, and Sean Liu with Viewsonic. So thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Wonderful. So, you know, post-pandemic, right, the way that we work and the way that we use screens and things of that nature, it has significantly changed, right? Before, you may have just had a PowerPoint presentation on a monitor, but now we're using them and repurposing them for different things. So, in the realm of conferencing and collaboration, how have display solutions evolved to enhance communication and productivity?
I think from our side, it's been a unique challenge to solve. Like you said, pre-COVID, it was kind of, you know, go in a conference room, project from your computer, PowerPoint on the wall. From there, it was kind of work from home. And then your screen was no longer in the conference room or meeting room, but it's basically your desktop display in your home office where you're looking at people as well as communicating them via Zoom or Teams or whatever you choose to use. And then post-pandemic, it's been this need to now incorporate the people that are in office, that are collaborating in office, you know, annotating on the boards, as well as trying to integrate and engage the people that are still dialing in from home. And you know, obviously, as the display technologies evolved, we kind of have begun to understand the use case to better allow our customers and our clients to create a more interactive environment in their conference rooms.
Yeah, just to add on to that, it's a lot of people like coming back to work, they want to join a meeting, they want to like simplify the process. In the past, pre-pandemic, we weren't really prepared to have the kind of solutions. And people were like struggling to like, how do I join a meeting? How do I start a meeting? But now we have solutions where we have one tap solution or one click. You're in the meeting.
Well, let's elaborate on that, right? Bryan, talk a little bit about, obviously, when you look at the pandemic, right, we kind of just started shoving information on screens, right? And now we're kind of at the back end of that product life cycle, so we have intentional collaboration solutions, and you see them everywhere over here. But talk about some of the ways that we have shifted from this idea of shove everything we can on a screen to actually making a display that is creating value for people.
Correct. Yeah, that's a good point, because usually when people think of a collaboration display, it's something that it's an all-in-one, right? So to simplify the process of, oh, do I need a media player? Do I need a PC? Do I need a camera? Do I need all these components to go to the display? And currently right now, when we design the display, we want it to be focused. We want to be, this is a most reliable display that you can get, and that it can work 24/7 if you need to. You don't have to use it, but the reliability, the serviceability, and the life cycle of the product is very important. So our display is basically taking that into consideration to make sure that when it's on the screen, you don't have to touch it. It's just a set it and forget it type of a product, right? And we're doing that, and we also have other capability of the display that, hey, what if I just want to do a simple presenting on my screen from my laptop? How can I do that? So connectivity is kind of like the main things that you have to look at. So HDMI, USB-C for the latest technology in one cable, powering your laptop while you're presenting the video, that's the key. So we implement all of those into our display to make sure that connectivity is not an issue.
And I think I'd like to add that it's also about efficiency, right? For the end user, it's, can I get into the conference room, or can I dial in and be ready to go? No problems, right? I'm not spending 5 minutes to start a meeting. And then from the integrator's perspective, it's, is it easy to install, and does it integrate well with the other components within the solution? Because, you know, Viewsonic in this case, let's, as an example, may provide the display, but there are other software, hardware components that need to integrate into it to create this whole collaborative environment. And part of the challenge is also not just working to address the needs of what our display can do, but also how well we can work with our partners within the industry as well.
And I think you've both hit on points of, these things need to be reliable, these things need to be flexible, and especially coming out of the pandemic, what role do you see display technologies playing in the future of conferencing and collaboration?
I think visually, the display will always be the center of it because you always want to either see the other person or also see the PowerPoint presentation. I think over time, what we're going to have to understand is what the use case is. So I think the whole challenge that we face is how do we address the needs of the hybrid workforce, right? And really, how are we engaging to everyone? How are we inclusive to not just the people in the office, not just the people at home, but also across the globe in some instances. And it's a fun challenge to solve, though.
Well, Sean, one of the things, too, that I really appreciate about Viewsonic is that really throughout different verticals, the Viewsonic name carries a lot of weight, right? There are some Pro AV companies who hyper-focus on one vertical, but you guys don't really do that, right? Especially in education, we're a long-term player in the industry, right? How does that brand equity, especially post-COVID, help with user buy-in, maybe even adapting new technologies with teachers, students, things like that? How does that name carry some extra weight?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've been in education for a long time, and I think back in the days where we had monitors, projectors, and that's how we can get a name into education, and the schools are familiar with Viewsonic, our name. And then now we developed this new technology, like in the classroom technology environment, they used to have maybe back in the old days with chalkboards, and then they kind of upgraded to projectors. But in a bright classroom, it's kind of hard to see sometimes that have a really bright projector. Now they upgraded to the large interactive flat panels. They give them a much better interactive experience. In the past, you have the interactive projectors where it's not very sensitive, but now you have the whiteboards. It's like a giant iPad where it allows you to interact with the board and also save all your work and communicate with students, and also students with remote location, they can also see what you're presenting. So just having that technology enables teachers to teach students in class and also remote in a hybrid kind of setup. So that's how we get into classroom advanced technologies and get our name out there.
I want to follow up with Bryan on that too, right? Education in a lot of ways is a unique industry because there are tangible outcomes that are required from the technology, and it's hard to quantify, right? Whether it's teacher satisfaction, student learning goals, right? At the end of the year, you find out who passed the test. I'm oversimplifying, of course, but what are some of the ways that you're actually seeing the technology be leveraged to drive tangible and actionable outcomes?
Yes, that's a really good question because in the old days, if you have a screen or display, maybe it's just one touch, right? Now you have an opportunity to interact with the students much better, so you can have multiple display. One can be touched, the other can be non-touch, or you can have one on the left, one on the right, or one in the back, so that all the students can see what's on the display or they can collaborate better, because with the current technology right now, usually it's about how you interact from the teacher and the student. So basically they have different devices. Yep. So if it's a Chromebook or a laptop or maybe an iPad or a Chromebook, a Android tablet, they need to communicate that. And if you don't have the connectivity to do that, then it's very hard for you to teach that student or to collaborate. So in a hybrid education environment, basically you have people that's in the classroom, but maybe you're sick and you want to call in and join the class. You can do that now. You don't have to be in the classroom anymore. You can be remotely and learn what you need to learn and interact in this technology.
I'd like to add that I think that technology is only as good as its usage. So if it's not used, obviously you've got a big expensive piece of hardware or even software that's goes to waste. And one of the core focuses of us, especially in education, is our professional development team who goes out there, trains the actual teachers that are going to be in the classroom how to use the tools, what the different features are, so they can make their lesson plans more engaging to the students. And I think that's been very successful for us in driving adoption and usage within the classroom.
I love that point, Jeff. Technology is only as good as the people who use it. It was incredible to have you guys on the show today. Love really the insight that you brought into really both the education and that display conferencing collaboration world. Thank you so much for joining us on AVIXA TV.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Look, that wraps up our show for this afternoon. We have one more show live from the show floor tomorrow, which is kind of sad thinking about it now. That's a realization that I'm having. That's tough. That means InfoComm is almost over. But we want to make sure that you tune in with us live on AVIXA TV. Tomorrow we've got Jamie Finnegan, Jeff Rushton, and Doug Price. We got Mark Mullins, Domien de Witte. And what that was from yesterday. That was today. Somebody's trying to confuse me.
We have Dave.
We've got Dave Labuscus from AVIXA. We've got Dimensional Innovations, and we've got a great panel about Vegas sports happening to preview InfoComm next year. Hey, stay tuned. We've got a couple great video clips coming up after this, but we appreciate you. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
See you later.
If you're installing or troubleshooting network devices, you know that reliable operation depends upon the performance of the cabling and the network. With LinkIQ, you get cable testing from the world leader along with network testing. The LinkIQ can characterize the performance of your cable up to 10 gigabits per second and troubleshoot problems fast. When it's time to connect to the network, LinkIQ shows you the switch name and IP address, the port number, speed, and VLAN. It also shows the IP address of the switch and performs a connectivity test to an IP address of your choice. Plus power over Ethernet testing that includes a load test to make sure the power you need is really there. When you're done, store the results, then document it with Linkware, the industry's de facto standard. LinkIQ, cable testing you trust and network testing you need.
The Microflex Advance MXA902 integrated conferencing ceiling array is the first complete ceiling audio solution for AV conferencing. Because it mounts overhead, it provides more consistent sound quality throughout the room than an all-in-one soundbar mounted on the wall. The MXA902 has all three things needed for exceptional audio in small to medium-sized meeting spaces. First, there's an advanced array microphone with single-zone automatic coverage technology. It captures every participant in a 20 by 20 foot area right out of the box. Second, onboard IntelliMix DSP eliminates annoying echo and room noise and adjusts talker levels automatically. Everyone is heard clearly no matter where they sit. Finally, the MXA 902 has a built-in wide dispersion loudspeaker that delivers robust sound throughout the room without the need for external speakers and amplifiers. Remote participants and program audio playback are easy to hear. With its revolutionary integrated design, the MXA 902 is quicker to install than individual microphones, loudspeakers, and signal processors. One network cable with PoE Plus is all you need. The MXA 902 integrated conferencing ceiling array is the ideal solution for AV conferencing in small and medium-sized meeting rooms. It's the fastest way to better sound.
The industry has evolved over the years. Analog to digital, isolated to network, server-based to cloud-based, but fundamental pains persist. Rolling out hundreds of rooms quickly and reliably is difficult, time-consuming, and expensive. Complex equipment frustrates staff, managers, and executives alike. The recent shift to hybrid offices has organizations considering replacement of outmoded systems. They're looking for simple, reliable, flexible, secure, and easy-to-budget video conferencing solutions. It's time for a totally new approach. It's time the AV industry met the Internet of Things. Introducing Conference Room as a Service, subscription-based products and services only from Wesco. A subscription that scales and works for your business. Together, with your preferred AV installer, we help you choose the right size system for your meeting spaces, small rooms, medium-sized rooms, and large conference rooms. Once you've chosen the size room you want to deploy, choose Zoom or Microsoft Teams and add options like bring your own device and a monitor if needed. Then choose how many rooms you want to add to your subscription. It's that easy. Once your AV integrator has installed and activated your equipment, your Conference Room as a Service subscription has you covered with advanced replacement, an industry-leading warranty, live 24/7 world-class help desk support, and a portal for remote monitoring and service tickets. With this service, all rooms are online and ready to go once connected to the network. It's never been easier to deploy, monitor, and evolve your workplace technologies, all at an affordable price with easy payments. Conference Room as a Service subscription-based products and services, only from Wesco. Simple, reliable, flexible, secure, easy to budget.